Free TV, in association with getoutofdebtfree.org.
Actually, I don't know who's coming in, but we're going to do, there's a vote just now on, one's free energy, that's hacking the pineal, but we might be able to do both if we rattle through one. What did you want to watch?
The energy thing would be good.
The energy thing would be good, there's a vote on energy thing here. Pineal. Did you have a vote? Are you with him?
Yeah, that's
Ah,
two, right?
well,
That's two.
That's two, that is.
You could say free DMT, couldn't you?
I could do, have you got any?
Free DMT? Well, I have, yeah. It comes out about 3 till 4 o'clock in the morning. No, I'm not sharing it.
Well, we might be able to do a bit of both. I mean, it'd be a bit of a fast run, but this could be quite, you know, we could sort of compress things. One really, I think it leads to the other because, well, we'll go through this and you'll find out. You'll find out. I'm doing the talk before I'm doing the talk. But have you heard about the pineal? Have you heard about the pineal? Do you know what the pineal is? See, no, inside your head, correct, that's right. That's right. Now, funny enough, in diagnosis of soft tissue cancer in the brain, they look for in X-rays a calcification in the middle of the brain, or this thing which reacts to X-rays. And if that's moved one way or another, forward, backward, up or down, whichever way they scan, if it's moved that way, then there's a soft tissue growth this side, usually called a tumour, you know, benign or cancerous. And what it's telling you is that this object in the middle, which is the pineal, has been calcified over time, and nearly everybody's pineal is calcified. And we'll find out why the pineal's so important, or I think it's so important, so do many others. So if it's not calcified and it's functioning properly, then we get access to other, you might say, sensors. So one of the things that shuts this down or calcifies it is diet. It's bad diet, it's fluoride, it's chlorine, mainly fluoride calcifies the pineal. So that's in the middle of your brain, and we're just going to find out a little bit more about it as we go along, or what it could be doing, because, well, there's something in physics, they talk about a wave and a particle, and there's a double slit test. So if you're projecting something at a double slit on the screen opposite the slit, if it's a wave, you'll get a sort of fractionation pattern. If it's a particle, you'll get two horizontal lines in line with the grating. And the thing about this, as they've tested it, is they've shone waves at a grating, and it'll come as a wave or a particle, depending on one thing, and that is if it's been observed. Now, if a wave, that's all that is, suddenly becomes a particle just because it knows it's being watched, sometimes called the light of consciousness, or how you look at things. That's how you're creating your reality. That's why I think the pineal is so important, because I think that's what it does. And it'll do it a lot better if it's working properly. So this is the chakra system, as they call it. Chakras just means wheel. And there's usually 7 chakras shown, but also there's a crown chakra, which is vertical. And that's all locating to the center of the brain. And this one that comes out to the forehead is called the third eye. And in India you'll see people put bindis on there, which is referencing the third eye. And the third eye is located in the pineal. Pineal is this central part again. This is a section through the average human brain, and it's compared to the Eye of Horus, which has all kinds of significance, but there's a very great similarity in the geometries. So, well, a bit more about this little object in the middle. Okay. That's all right. The pineal, just a bit more about it, is for any organ in the body, it has the highest blood flow. It's about as big as your little fingernail. And it sits exactly between the 2 lobes of your brain. So it's about the size of your little fingernail, and it has a flow in and a flow out, and the blood supply is massive by comparison to any other organ in the body. It's the largest blood flow. Inside it, it has what's called structured water, which sounds a bit odd, but water can have all kinds of structures in it, but there's a way of of almost like a crystalline structure within the water. And on the inside of the pineal, there's rods and cones. I don't know if you know anything about the eye, but on the retina, on your retina, you've got rods and cones. Rods are for detecting contrast, like shades of grey, and the cones are for detecting colour. And of course, you've got two of them, so you can get binocular vision, which gives you depth of where everything is. So if you shut one eye, try and put your fingers together. With one eye, from way apart, it's difficult to get them to touch. You can look at it with one eye, but really you've got two eyes to give you depth of field, so you can tell how far away something is. You've got rods and cones to give you contrast and colour, to see all the colour spectrum. So in the pineal, we've got this structured water, and we've got rods and cones. I mean, it's obvious what the eye's connected to, but what's the pineal connected to if it's got the similar geometry as the eye? So this is part of the, one of the questions we live with. But the other thing about, if you're just coming in, we're doing quite a fast run through on one talk because there was only a few people here earlier and some wanted to see the pineal, and then we're going to go on to a bit of Schauberger and implosion. So this is one of the largest statues in, guess where? Does anybody know where that is? The Vatican. Now why on earth, if a man was standing there and he was standing on this bit here, his head had come to about here, maybe there. It's enormous, absolutely enormous. And there's old Popey, and top of his staff, another representation of the pineal. I've forgotten that god's name, but it was one of the Egyptian gods, holding a pine cone which represents the pineal. So obviously some people think this is a very important organ. I wonder why I wasn't taught about it in school. The winding caduceus, they talk about raising the kundalini, sometimes represented by two snakes winding up a staff. Sometimes it has wings on the top, the wings of Mercury, the staff up the middle. Well, in some ways you could call up the spinal cord and that rising energy which comes up round the spine if you do certain practices. Sometimes it has two snakes facing. They kind of face across it. It's a funny sort of wind. It's like, this is shown flat, but obviously they're going in circles round and up to the top, both ways. And I think if they were pointing anywhere, they'd be pointing at the pineal, energizing it in some particular way, assuming it's working in the individual. This is another one that's the guy's name, Talmud, holding the pine cone. So the Egyptians were onto this. Hair shaped like a pine cone. So you can read what it says up there. So it's referenced in ancient texts many times. It's on Bacchus's staff, god of drunkenness, Bacchus. It's referencing, the good times that I had, through the pineal. Because the point about this is, how do you create the reality? You know what coffee does to you, probably knows what nicotine does to you, know what alcohol does to you, but do you know what ayahuasca does to you, or DMT? So there's one that, I suppose the Western eye, DMT, dimethyltryptamine, is released twice only in the body, once at birth and once when you leave the vehicle, i.e. this meat sack. So the suggestion is there's an animating principle, you can call it spirit, soul, whatever you like. I don't know, it might be a bit religious over time, so I'm not getting into that. That is the animator for the body. And that animation must enter the body at a particular time. So the question I have for you all seems, does anybody accept this? Do you think this is a crock? Have you got a soul? Have you got an animating principle? Yeah? Yeah? Okay. So when did you decide to come into your body?
Just before I was born, I guess.
Several days after we were born.
After you were born?
After we conceived.
When did you decide? Obviously you're an intelligent person.
Before I was born.
Before you're born?
Conceived.
Just before you're born. Well, this does sound like a stupid question, because obviously you were very young at the time. Maybe you've turned into an adult. Maybe you got habituated to whatever this 3D matrix is, and you've forgotten the time when you were a soulic energy, which might be a bit finer than the body. If you look at a body, this body, it puts out warmth. You can actually feel the warmth, but there's an energy field around the heart, which I'm told goes up to 30 feet. There's also other subtle energies like your emotional body, that goes out a certain distance, and your mental body, which goes out a certain distance. So it's like you've got shells of energy which you can't necessarily see, maybe because we've never been trained in it. But I do have another question for you. If that's true, what is the finest energy in you? We've got heat, we've got, this is energy, this is, it makes so many calories if you burnt the fat. What's the what? Sexual energy is fairly fine. I would say that's fairly close. I mean, if you were talking about the Gurdjieffian system, that would be the fastest energy. He says this system, he calls us three brain beings. This is the intellectual center, and this is the slowest. Then you've got the emotional body, which is much, much faster than the intellectual body. Then you've got the moving instinctive body, which he subdivided into the sexual center. Instead of all of them, the sex center is the fastest. That's probably why we're here. Because if we had to think about it, we'd never do it, would we?
With Taoism, you'd actually say that if someone's gone on a journey or in life, they actually change their energy form, so they refine their energy, and you get that also in alchemy. So you're actually refining energy. So they would say that refined energy that's gone round and circulated would be much finer, much more.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with that.
That comes from the sexual energy. That is
As well as.
obviously a key to knock.
Yeah.
Talks about, which is light. Okay.
Yeah. Well, it says in the Bible, if your eye be single, thine body will be filled with light. I mean, I don't take it, or that, comic book that was, hacked for adults, called the Bible, literally, but there are sayings in there that do have a resonance, and that's one of them. So, if your eye be single, what would it be referring to? I think it was referring to particular technology. And I think the Coptics have done a quite good job on this, some of them better than others. But instead of having some religious overtone, like, if you examine that too closely and you don't go through your third party called a priest, that's blasphemy. So there's a third party governor, and what is blasphemy? See, well, I have my own relationship to all that is, and I don't require a third party. Dear priest, strike me dead if I have to go through you. Nothing's happened. You have a little twinge in the left foot, but apart from that, I'm okay. That's George Carlin for you. So we're saying, just back up a bit, apart from the humour, I think it's correct, because if you follow certain, you might call them disciplines. I mean, if you're drinking good water and you're in a good energetic area and you're aware of it and eating good food, probably a lot of green food, then the body would cleanse and it'd be a lot easier to reach a certain state of being that you might call a higher state, whether you're just meditating or you're just still. Some of the experiences I've had through focusing on a particular thing, it's definitely an altered state. One of the things you notice about it is the lack of measurement of time. That's one of the things I do. I think, I've only been doing this half an hour and it's 3, that sort of thing. Which does suggest that the measurement of time is to do with the 3D physicality, and it's linear. So our reference system is past, present and future, but it doesn't mean to say that other objects or non-physical entities or the fairy folk, they may have a different reference system, which is only now. They have no past, present or future. They only have present. They're only now in the moment, which is a difficult concept to grasp. But to find out if you've been there, it's, to either meditate or get involved in whatever you're doing, and time has changed. But there are particular ways of doing things. There's very particular ways. And I suppose the ancients cultivated this in all kinds of ways. I'll flick through a few. I'll tell you a little story about my adventures. That's the Bindi, third eye. What they're doing now. We're getting onto this stuff that I think is quite interesting, which is kind of to do with technology. Now, I don't know if you know it, but this down here is called a magnetron, and that's what's in your microwaves. And that focuses waveguides and amplifies a particular signal, and that particular signal causes an oscillation in a box and heats your food up. Personally, I never use one, but this is from one of the temples in Italy. I forgot which one it is. Oh, there's the guy, Diocletian, and he built. Well, they call them temples, which was the name for them. Particular structures built in a particular place on the earth. You might have heard of ley lines or energetic systems crisscross the earth. So when you understand where these are running, people dowse for them now, and they probably dowse for them then, probably a lot more sensitive. And they'd build their structure in a particular orientation, like Yannick was talking about. If it was a pyramid, it would be arranged north-south on one of the faces. So these are arranged in a very particular way over that energy system. And look what you've got inside. You've got these little alcoves. Well, maybe later they've stuck a little statue in there. They're wave guides. What wave are they guiding? Anyway, we'll just have a little bit more at the structure, or some of the structures. This is a Temple of Venus. Some of this information is a direct hitch from a website I recommend you have a look at, and it's called The Measuring System of the Gods. I don't know if you come across that, but it's excellent. It's got loads of books in there you can download for now. All free energy, Tesla papers, Rodin, Marco Rodin stuff, the whole bunch of stuff. Measuring System of the Gods. The Measuring System of the Gods. Oh, this is one of the pictures that he's got on his site, and he's really referenced, he calls this ancient broadband. So it's all built on phi ratios. I don't know if you know what phi is. It's the divine ratio. It's the shape of an A4 piece of paper. One unit down one side, 1.618 across the long side. 1 to 1.618. Yeah, slightly. It's not far off though. It's very close, but it's pleasing to the eye because it's very close to what's called the divine ratio. So some buildings look good because they're built on this divine ratio. In a way, what we're saying here, it's like a fractal universe, and certain rules apply, like the Fibonacci ratio, the phi ratio. They all kind of relate, to do with spin and rotation, snail shells, galaxies, tornadoes, certain structures. Well, actually, when I tried some DMT, I saw all this stuff. It was all like bink, They say you get a release of DMT twice in your life. Well, you don't. You can get it once more if you do DMT. I think ayahuasca works in the same way. But it was pretty trippy, I can tell you. It only lasted 10 minutes. And what kind of freaked me out was audio was perfect, but the visuals were really odd. It was like everybody's angular and the grass. I was thinking, it looks like crystals. Can I step on that? It wasn't like that before. I think the thing about this is what you take as reality. If you have an experience which is totally different, now you know there's a different way of perceiving things, and it's like a key in a lock. I mean, I haven't done it since. I only did it once in the spring. I might do it again. I might go and do ayahuasca. I don't know. But it gave me a little insight. It sort of had a look in a box I didn't know was there, because I thought, well, this is it. This is the only reality. And I think there is something about the humans, the human being, which is sometimes referred to as creators. And we have this facility with our imaginations to create. There are other energy systems which I think are non-physical. They relate to them, they refer to them as the archons and the veilons relating to the jinns. And these are non-physical entities, but you can't throw anything out of the universe. And you can harvest certain energies, and they're quite interested in the negative energies. Monroe called loosh production, which is anything to do with fear, anxiety, stress in that regard. So, football games, EastEnders, wars, any competitive thing, if it creates this sort of energy amongst people, you've got a vast production of kind of milk, then they love it. That's just a theory I have, but it kind of makes a weird kind of sense. So if you can do a few things to these, which we now refer to as cows, that you can milk energetically, shorten their lifespan, give them a real crap diet, give them loads to worry about so they never get a chance to wake up and contemplate anything, and also at the same time, what do we do, shorten the lifespan? Oh yeah, calcify the pineal. Because the only way you're going to hack out of this 3D reality, if you've had no other... I mean, maybe you jumped off a cliff with a parachute and had an amazing experience on the way down, or a true epiphany because you think you're going to die, and the parachute opens and you land, but things are never quite the same again. That's what it feels like. I used to be a whitewater instructor in Norway, so I used to be paddling quite big water, and I had a few of those incidents, I must say. But obviously I survived. But, close encounters of the near-death kind, the heart didn't stop, but I thought it did. Anyway, that sort of thing. So you have different once you've had that kind of a shock or that experience, then in this reality it's not quite as linear and smooth as you ever thought it was. That's the point I'm trying to make. And if you know how the pineal's working, then maybe you can have other experiences. Some call them shamanic, some call them magical, some call them wizards, some call them Druids, you know, but I think they're all doing a similar sort of thing. When you strip off anything to do with religion, you're talking technology here, it's built in and some of it's solid and you can replicate it. So you can amplify the signal if you get your geometry right. So you can get your... What this is doing is creating a hotspot for energy. And some of the... like Tesla and Schauberger I've been studying, they talk about a funny phenomenon. They talk about thinking from the octave above. Octave above what? I mean, I think I'm thinking now. But they talk about, you know, they're going sort of like on song, and Schauberger talked about letting his consciousness disappear with the water, and when it came back it had a bunch of information and he built all this amazing kit. Where did he get the info from? He must have been reading it from somewhere. And some people call that Akashic Records, or some call it the stream of universal information highway. But whatever it is, there's definitely something. It's like, I think about it, a bunch of old LPs myself, and they're on a stack, and you put the needle in a different track, you know what I mean? A bit old-fashioned in that regard, you know, 4 CDs and all the rest of it. So when you're focusing on something, all the info's there, and if you get the mind focused, which requires the use of the pineal, not the pituitary, although if that's working in resonance with the physical body, that's a good thing. It's not your left elbow, it's not your right thumb, sorry, the right thumb, it's the pineal. You know what I mean? And that's on song now, and that is making the needle, which you can drop in the groove in the record. So I don't know what you've done, you might have done something that really fascinated you that nobody else has. And where does it come from? I mean, it's like saying, one of my favourite sayings is actually to do with thinking, you know, where do thoughts come from, or creative thoughts? It's not as if you've gone in the corner and rubbed 2 Boy Scouts together, is it? You know what I mean? Where they're coming from? Where'd you get your thoughts from? So, now we were talking earlier a little bit about higher frequencies in the body, and you might have forgotten when you entered your body. But I mean, you could, the way I test this, you can do this at home. You leave your hand on the desk there. You just put it down anywhere. Hand, anybody, everybody, just put it down. Okay. Leave it, leave it, leave it, leave it. Okay. It's not moving, is it? And it would stay there for a long time until you decide to scratch your nose. So, what is the difference between that staying there and you scratching your nose? What is the animating principle of that movement? I mean, people say, "Oh, well, it's the brain." I say, "Is it?" Well, I can feel that in my fingertip, and you can do the same. Is there a brain in your fingertip? So that nerve is going all the way up to the brain and all the way back to the fingertip to tell you what you're doing. And the light that comes into your eye, for one thing, it's upside down because it's going through one lens, as you probably are aware, onto the retina. The brain's putting it up the right way up. We know we've got rods and cones, and it goes through the optic nerve to a part of the brain which takes up the biggest part of the skull to interpret all this data. And as the saying goes, there's no light in there, is there? So what are you seeing? There's no light in there, so what you're seeing, you're talking electronic impulses that make this real for you. Okay, let's move along anyway. So dozing off on that one. So what we're looking for is a hotspot. We're talking about ancient technology, before all this mucking about with HAARP, before microwaves, well, before man-made microwaves, there's probably natural microwaves, particular energy systems which are quite refined. So, and you're also talking about several generations. These ideas do not come about instantly. But so long, maybe you found in your tribe as you were going along that some people had a particular ability. They had a particular, they were called the seers. A lot of them have been women over time, that's why they've been wiped out. That's why women have been vilified and things like that, because they were the seers. There are male seers as well, they're called wizards. But the female side of things would be herbalists, healers, giving birth to all kinds of ideas apart from children. And over time, I mean, they've been wiped out. Any esoteric knowledge to do with this has been systematically wiped out, completely eradicated, even to the female energies. But over time, you might find there was either a girl or a boy had this facility of mind to think from the octave above. And what you want to do is amplify that facility. So you set up your technology, which we're calling ancient broadband. So the energy be coming, if you remember the little amplifier, which looked like the microwave. This is all to 1.618. It's all on particular geometries and frequencies and rooms that do all kinds of wonderful things. I haven't built one of these, so I'm not entirely certain how it works, but it makes sense. And you'll have a hot spot wherever it might be, and that's the place where the subtle energy engineer used to stand. Now I'm calling them a subtle energy engineer because they knew what they were doing. For one thing, it might have been in their DNA. What's DNA when you unwind it? Doesn't it look like an antenna? It does to me. It's either, so what's the difference between a coil and an antenna, a transmitter and a receiver? What's it receiving? The other thing they know from experiments is all kinds of magical things to do with DNA, but when you're in a nice space, it actually unwinds. It gets longer. When you're all tensed up, it gets shorter, so it's receiving on a different frequency. When it's relaxed, it's receiving on a different frequency. Some say long live marijuana, but anyway, that's naughty, isn't it? Anyway, so you're going to have a hot spot, and in that place, you're going to place somebody you've cultivated over time, and we're going to call a subtle energy engineer. And that person's going to have a particular frequency of functioning that picks up stuff which is non-local, from the octave above, from seeing. What you might ask them to do is, if we do this, this, and this, what could the possible outcomes be? And because they're functioning at a higher level, they say, well, if you do that, this is the likely outcome. If you do that, this is the likely outcome. And they'll say, well, let's do that. Let's plant the crops then, and we'll get the best outcome, or how are we going to defend the city, whatever it was. And the reason I'm calling them subtle energy engineers is I'm making a discrimination in words, because later they became known as priests. And that's one of the slips, if you like, or I don't know, a bit of a distortion going on there, because now if you've got a priest and priestess or whatever they are, they might get paid in gold or some extra fruit or the odd Vestal Virgin for all I know, because now they're not doing it to get the results, they're doing it for a reward, so they're no longer subtle energy engineers. But if we go back to the temples, so we've amplified a signal and they're receiving it and they're sharing it with the congregation, if you want to call them that, or whoever's around. And they're pretty good at it. I just got to wear me prop now. That's better. Oh, that's so much better. Now I can talk to you properly. Told you it worked, didn't I? Anyway, so maybe. Oh yeah, it's a bit mathsy. See, it's the difference between AM and FM and carrier waves. This is brilliant, but we'll move on from that because nobody likes maths. And there's a description of the temples. And this is to do with the pituitary and pineal combination. One's to do with the body, the pituitary. So they've got to look after that and the pineal. And you get an oscillation in frequency between the two. And then you get the good stuff. Then you start to get the good stuff. And you can cultivate, which is part of the endocrine system. There's the thymus and there's the thyroid. I mean, right now I'm taking iodine. I don't know if you've heard of iodine, or Lugols, because it's missed out in our diets. Nobody ever talks about it. It's the stuff they put on you when they're operating, and it turns yellow, and most people are deficient in it. You get it from green veg, seaweed, things like that. But if you're deficient in it, your whole energy system goes down. Everything goes down. But if you get in good balance, you're in good nick. A bunch of text, which you're not going to read. This is, I don't know, have you heard of Project Looking Glass? Oh, you can see the light. Anyway, it looks a bit like the thingy from Contact. You remember Jodie Foster? Now this, it's hard to see because of the light, but never mind. Person would be about up from there to there. This is a circle with certain antenna around it. They've got a certain rotation of fields around it, and in there's a barrel of carefully prepared structural water. So the other thing about this, you cannot see what you're not the vibration of.
Structural water.
Structured water. Yeah, it's water does. Have you heard of Masaru Emoto? Masaru Emoto. Well, you can as well. He grows crystals from water. And he gets different results depending on the intention. So he'll take the same water, like distilled water, and he'll pray to it and say nice things and I love you, and he'll grow a beautiful crystal. Then on the same vial, or from the same source, he'll put a different intention, such as Hitler and I hate you, and then he'll grow the crystal that looks like molten lead. You can look it up. So what you're talking about here is the direct intention from whatever you are as a consciousness is affecting the results you're getting out of the water. There was Jean Benveniste, who was this French scientist who did the research in homeopathy. He was completely vilified, and after all his research, he came up with a saying which said, water has a memory. So how is it memoried? How's it remembering? What in the water is remembering anything? And how do you create the memory, and how do you wipe it? Well, I think you wipe the memory by putting it through a very tight vortex, and you might use magnets, and that way you remove any memory in the water, plus your intention to do so, and then you can reprogram that water to do whatever it is you want it to do, which is worth testing. Don't take my word for it, but there's plenty of research on the internet along these lines. So that, in that way, I'm not sure how they structured this water, but you can change the structure in water and lower the surface tension just by putting it through a magnetic field. And why would you want to lower the surface? Water has a meniscus in a glass. It goes up at the edge, and if you put a blob of it on a polished surface, it would blob up. And if it's got high surface tension, it's got a very steep edge to the blob. And if it's got low surface tension, which you can affect, it's got a very shallow edge to the blob. Why is this important? Well, if you read Patrick Flanagan's work on Hunza water and lowering the surface tension of water, if all our tap water is crap pretty much. It's got chlorine in it, it's probably got fluoride in it. We know what fluoride does, shuts down the pineal. You ain't going to get to heaven with that. Chlorine's not good for you because it poisons your system. The only reason they're using chlorine is that they have a terrible reticulation system, which doesn't know what water is or how it works, and what you've got coming out the tap is a water corpse, so it's dead. So you've got to re-energize it, so that's why people are vortexing, spinning the water with intention in a particular corner. And also what they find when they measure some of this water is a low surface tension. Again, why is that important? Because if you've got low surface tension, it can go through the cells a lot easier. So it's easier for the water to hydrate the body, and also if it's got anything in it that's worth having from the stomach, or whatever you've eaten, that'll go into the cells easier with it. If you've got high head surface tension, you can drink all you like. You're dying of thirst, basically. Most people are dehydrated, suffering from scurvy, because they can't get into the cells because the water's surface tension's so high to hydrate the cells. The same with plants. Same problem they have. I mean, you can try these experiments at home. But anyway, you can't see anything you're not the vibration of, said earlier. Got off on one. But the other thing about it is you cannot build a technology that's not already in you. So what's the technology that's externalized for the eye? We're looking at it. Cameras, television. What does that mean? It means tele means distance, vision, distant seeing. So you're seeing at a distance. Television. Hearing, externalize the function of the ear. You get a telephone and mobiles, or you combine them together. What do you get if you externalize the technology of the pineal? Barrel-shaped water in which time flips over, electromagnetic shielding capability, ability to fine-tune electromagnetic shields, ionized gas to pick up images. So what they did is they built this gadget. It's massive, it's huge, it's underground, so it's protected. Person's about that tall. This is from Wilcock's site, David Wilcock's site, divinecosmos.com. He's done a load of research on this and the pineal. And so you're externalizing the functioning of the pineal, but you also have within that field somebody who can pick that up and retransmit it, and it's transmitted to an excitable gas, like a cathode ray that used to be used in our cathode ray tube tellies. And then you can create the image in the gas, which is kind of weird stuff. But what it allowed them to do is see forwards and backwards in time, and it allowed them to see a whole bunch of things. But it's hidden text, it's black ops, it's not for you. So it's an ionized gas to pick up images from time-space, like a cathode ray. What is time-space? Any ideas what time-space is? Because if we think this is just linear time, no, this is it. There's a linear time. Yesterday, I was jigging, and now I'm doing this, and I'm going to have a cup of tea later, like it's a linear flow. But, maybe the rest of space doesn't have that problem. Maybe everything is recorded there. Future possible events, past possible events, the whole shebang is all recorded. And you can go and have a look. Well, that's quite interesting one to just ferment around the noodle, isn't it? Yeah, consider. And they're telling you here the technology you would use to externalize that event. The way we do it is we do it directly. And so the higher mind you might call the divine. Or how do you get to the divine? Through higher mind. What's higher mind? Well, let's suggest that there's three parts to what we experience down here. There's higher mind, which works at a higher frequency. That's your conceptual mind. That's where you get all the lovely ideas. They're beautiful. I always got the form prize for progress at school, and they never told me where I started, like this. And the other one was a bit of a dreamer. A bit of a dreamer. Have the form prize for progress, John. Well, we're not telling you where you began, son. It's a long way down. Anyway, so what am I doing? I'm dreaming. I'm not interested in 1492. Some bloke called Columbus sailed the ocean blue and discovered the new world, as if no bugger was living there already. I mean, what a crock. Anyway, so I'm not interested in that. I'm thinking of fairies and floaty, and that's conceptual mind. You know, at this stage, at this age, I do not need DMT or marijuana. You know, it's great. You know, it's all free. But others don't approve. But anyway, that's the conceptual mind. Well, I'd stayed, you know, so I go off and have little ideas. So you've got the conceptual mind, and I'm going to download that information to my brain. My brain's the receiver now of those concepts. And the lower mind, which functions at lower frequency, is going to perceive that event, these events. Conception, reception, perception. And nearly everybody is locked into reception and perception. That's why they have a mortgage, and they go to work, and they've got to work for money. And they've got to do this, and they've got to do that. They've got no time to conceive of anything else, because you're farming them for their ideas, or for their energy, or for their battery power, like the Matrix, I don't know. But if you ever do... if you think about these events where you create anything, whatever it is you've done, and later on, when you remember this conversation, I'll ask you the question, what's it feel like? Because most people say, what are you doing? Get back to work. You're off, you know. You say, oh, I was surfing. What's wrong with that? I mean, all the best ideas have come from there. When you talk to all the... Edison, when I asked Edison, he used to ring up Edison, the light bulb guy. Actually, it was all Tesla, as we know, or mainly Tesla. You couldn't get through to Edison at certain times because he was sitting for ideas. And what he was doing was sitting in his office, probably with his feet up, and he was just quiet. And he was just tracing ideas. And Tesla could design in his head a complex piece of machinery, run it in his head, see where the problems were, redesign it, and draw the blueprints exactly immediately afterwards. That's a good trick. I'm sure if we cultivated, we'd have the same facility if we applied it, because a lot of this stuff is like a muscle. I don't see any downside to this, because you don't need a prescription, you don't need permission, no side effects apart from good ones. I think it's well worth it, because anything that's been of any value has dropped out of the blue into somebody's noodle, because they've been thinking about it. Like the light bulb or the needle, or there's some development, you know, that picks up records, you know. Anyway, so why am I wearing this on my head? Well, I was thinking about all this stuff, and I was talking to people, and now and again I do a funny thing. I sort of do a zoom out from what I've been experiencing in the world. Otherwise, it's like trying to figure out what the Mona Lisa is from here. You sort of do that and think, well, I've met this person, they're really into astrology. I'm not, I've never have been, but they're talking about astrology, look at my star chart and saying, that's amazing, all your planets are in the top half. I'm saying, that sounds brilliant, what's that mean? You're an early indigo. Really? I've always wanted a label, because I've never known what I am, you know. I do have the form prize, I've still got the book for progress, but apart from that, I'm now an indigo, which is champion to me. I mean, you know, it's a bit odd, so you know, I like being an indigo, it'll do me. And you look up indigo and say, oh yeah, resonate with that. So anyway, I've got all my stars up there, and I think, oh well, I don't know what moon rising means, but anyway, I think about this. I think, right now, I've been unfair to you, because obviously I've thought about this over a long time. I just said to you, when did you enter your body? You know, it's like creepy, isn't it? What do you mean, when do I enter my body? Well, that's just not on, is it? I've never thought about that, and I'm on the spot. And I've been thinking about it for months. I was thinking, when did I enter my body? Sort of hovering about. Seems to be all right. Okay, we'll zoom in. Anyway, if you were going to do your birth chart, I'd do it at the time that you knew you entered your body. If you don't know when you entered your body, and somebody's told you what the time it was when you took your first breath, then you have a look at all your planets then, don't you? So you're a Gemini or a Libra or Aquarian or whatever you are, because you were born at a particular time and place. And all these planets were doing this stuff, and they have a reflection on who you are when you decided to enter your body. Well, didn't they when you were conceived? Didn't they when you were quickening in the womb? Did you first kick? Or was it only when you drew your first breath on Earth? Anyway, bit of a problem. You know, I didn't quite solve that one, so I thought, okay, I'll take as my birth chart, the one I was given, which is 1:30, 19th of October, 1955. So we'll go with that. So I do my chart, and there's a nice wheel. Have you ever seen it? It's a wheel, and it's got, you know, all the different houses in there, and you've got little planets in each house, and a few lines joining, a south node and a north node, and something rising and whatever. But the main influences, I haven't got it here actually, I haven't got my piece of paper, but from World of Wisdom I got this chart, and it showed me all my planets. There were 10 major influences, including the Sun and the Moon. So that's 8 planets, and each one has a crystal associated with it. Yeah? So you've got Tiger's Eye for the Sun, you've got what for the Moon? 'Cause I can't remember. And you've got one, you've got Neptune, you've got Saturn, and they've associated some cleverer than I a crystal with each one. So I got 2mm silver because I couldn't afford a band of gold. Because if you've got to make a crown, they've got King over there. I've missed out a bit actually. You've got to jump back a bit to the temples. Okay, so you've got your major temple in Italy, loads of investment. You want to do a fractal of that over in Londinium and still get the good stuff. And maybe your seers won't travel, so you have a seer over in London. They want to amplify the signal to the pineal. How would they do that with any technology? Well, I think they would wrap a band of highly conductive material around their heads, which would sit on the ears, because that would be dead in line with the centre of the brain. And you might think, what would that be made of? And while you're doing that, you might want to tune it to a specific frequency which is unique to you, whoever you are, so you can move them around. You might find a particular frequency which works on all wave bands. These crystals would be mounted on this band, which would probably be made of tin foil. Gold. Whatever. We talked about a few thousand years ago, but tin foil wasn't invented as far as gold foil was. Anyway, band of gold, and then you tuned it with crystals, so you've got band of gold with crystals on. What does that look like? A crown. Boom, boom. And I think, no, that's the Queen's crown. It's made of velvet and ermine, and it's in the tower, and it's only for her. You can't have one. Well, I don't want to be rude about the lady. So you may call me King John. I'm not sure you should all be still seated. I used to tell my kids this, I'm a very important person. They'd look at me. I said, I'll tell you how I know, because I'm attached to an important finger, all right? Don't you forget it. Anyway, so whatever your reason is, now you've got your crown, you've got your band of gold, you've got crystals on, it's all tuned to a certain frequency in a particular place, a little fractal in Londinium. So you stand in the energy spot, and you get the good stuff. And bloody hell, it works. You know, so might waggle a crystal here, or add another one there just for you. Bing, you're on the good stuff. That's the theory. I haven't proved it yet, but I did build my own crown.
Are they real gems?
These are the right crystals, Tiger's Eye and all the right ones. I'm not sure about, I can't remember what this one's called because I made it a year ago. But, so I've got a question for you. What's this part of your head called? And what's this called? Oh shit, really? So it's on your face then? So in your face, yeah, you get the joke, don't you? So why would they name this the temples? Why wouldn't they call it the gap between the ear and the eye? Maybe the eye dimple, or the ear-eye dimple. They call it the temples. How does it relate to a temple? Well, I think there was other bits of technology I missed out, or I haven't quite fathomed yet. And maybe they sat on the temples, I don't know. They call this the bridge of a nose, and also in electronics there's a bridge rectifier, so you can change circuits, you can swap things around. What I'm doing here is stripping off anything to do with religion. I'm not doing 3 kowtows or any Hail Marys in this stuff at all. I'm stripping off anything I can that looks like technology, which may help, you know, in the way we see or do things. Because if you're working at a low level frequency, you're going to get a low level output, you know. I lived in Oxford, I used to go to Blackbird Leys occasionally, and it was pretty grim around there, you know, the frequency seemed pretty low. It was football, and that was pretty much it anyway. Nothing wrong with Blackbird Leys, lots of nice people there. So, if you remember the last shape, here you have it in contact. Same sort of thing, and she drops through it. Takes a free fall, I can't remember, it's about 10 seconds. about the same time it took the towers to come down. But anyway, and it went in, and she goes in a wormhole. And at the end, there's a whole bunch of hoo-ha because it cost billions to build. But the question was, have you ever seen this film? The question was, there's the manipulating politician. He was saying, "You're trying to get us to accept. You didn't bring anything back to prove you've been there." And then the other lady asked him. He said, "Well, it is interesting the 15 hours of static on the video." And he says, "Yes, that was interesting, but we're not sharing that with anybody." So you're talking about externalizing certain technology, you might call it, either Project Looking Glass or in contact. Oh, I've got it. There you go. That's my chart. That's my birth chart. Who said that? Oh, you know about charts. So here you have Jupiter, amethyst, protection, Uranus, quartz. So one of these on the same orientation. All those little squiggles mean something. Obviously, that's the moon. And that's the sun, as far as I get. So there's your moon, which is moon silver hematite. So I've got hematite on the end. There's my crown, I'm calling that the front. And I'm going to stay, well, that's the front, so I'm going to wear that on the front.
Does it work?
Yeah, man, it does. Honest. Yeah, it does. I was thick as two short planks 2 years ago. Just kidding. I don't know. I was having this discussion with somebody today. So you do something like this, you've got to have two lives, one with the crown and one without, because in between you've done other stuff. So how would you know if it's working? But if you don't do something to ground these ideas, whatever they may be, they may as well stay in your head. But at least if you dig in a hole, or you're trying something, or you're building, how many people have you heard of that built their own crown? Anybody? Yeah, same here, just one. So you can build it. It's 2mm silver. You can buy it online. I don't know. That's about 30 quid's worth or something, or it was. Then you get your star chart. Call that the top. Wear it on the front for a while. It takes a bit of bending because otherwise it pinches a bit. So it takes about a week to get the shape right. And try it. And the other thing I'm going to try, which I haven't done yet because I mislaid it. It's only just come back. Is I'm going to retune it to other events in my life and see what they are, because I think the influence is subtle. So I'd live with a subtle influence. I used to wear this old, winter under my hat. Nobody knew I was wearing it. It's not the sort of thing you're going to walk down the street doing. It's all right, festy, but it's just something you get too many questions.
Like maybe they were using it to communicate, to make communication with one another, the priests.
Yeah.
Did you find any kind of telepathy or kind of communication thing?
Well, telepathy. I've had experiences of telepathy. On several. All right. Yeah, I have actually on several occasions. I mean, I think we all do. We just don't comment on it or verify it because we usually know what's. Sometimes we get a good inkling, especially people close to us. But I've had it direct. I've had a whole conversation. Actually, I had smoked some very good charis, and it's not a thing I do often, honest gov. Had a whole conversation with somebody I know very well. And when I got outside, he was quite used to it. And I was saying, what you're saying about so-and-so? And he just looks at me, "John, you didn't say anything." I said, "What do you mean? I was talking about, He said, "You didn't say anything." "Oh, right. We were just," he said, "Yeah, we were just doing that." And I had the experience at Festi with two other people who, I don't know, we were talking about a particular thing. Actually, we were talking about Bigfoot. And somebody mentioned Bigfoot, and they were talking about a particular occasion about this Bigfoot. And then they stopped, and I said, "Did you get the colour of the hair? Was it red?" And they said, "Yeah, I got red." And I said, "Was it walking down and described the path?" And they said, "Yes, and there was this there, and there was that there." So we verified that it was, like a telepathy. And if there's any truth in what's coming up now, I think we get more of it, which might be a bit confusing for some people, because they will get opened up more to telepathy. But you get the gist of this, so you can make your own if you want to try it. The other thing I was going to say is, now I've got used to it, I'm going to retune it to certain events. I don't know if I mentioned that. I've had in my life. But also what you could do is retune it to the birth date of Solomon, of, I don't know, some other guy, Genghis Khan. See what that was like, Might be a bit dodgy, but, it might be worth a try. And no, exactly. Well, it's subtle things, it's your perception of good and bad, isn't it? But anyway, I wouldn't say it was a very good thing, but anyway. This is a picture that's done by René Magritte, and in French it says underneath, "This is not a pipe." And you think, well, that's a bit useless, isn't it? Well, he's dead right. It's a picture of a pipe, you dumbass. Oh, you can tell that, you know. So how you perceive things, somebody's saying this is not a pipe, what does he mean? This is another expression of the pineal. Oh, I showed that just because it's to do with perception, how we perceive things. So these ideas are just like, you know, you can take them away and apply them in any way you want. You can verify it. I'm not selling so much, just sharing ideas. And some of them, I think there's milk in this cow, as the saying goes. So that's another representation of the pineal that is open, is working. I think that's the end of that. Did you like that one? Do you have any questions or anything that comes to mind?
Can't you tell?
Yeah, I can, but you need to share it. Everybody here is... I don't know if you...
Debt Free TV, in association with GetOutOfDebtFree.org.